Hey, welcome back to another episode. Jay's and Confused. Matt, how are we feeling after that one?
We're feeling good. We're feeling pumped up. We're feeling like we just saw Luka Garza's best game. We're feeling like Jordan Walsh just hit the biggest shot of his NBA life so far. And we're feeling like we pulled out a win against a talented Orlando Magic team.
We actually have a better record now than the Orlando
I
Magic, which
noticed
really
that as
surprised
well.
me.
Feels
Uh,
good.
it does. The standings will normalize at some point. There's no way the Bulls can outlast all the Magic and the Cavs and the teams we know are going to be at the top at the end. So I still feel good about beating one of the teams I expect to be at the top of the East.
Yeah, and when you say the standings will normalize, you mean we will stay above the Magic, but they'll be at the top two.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know about all that, but it's good to have a win versus a conference rival. I would have been a little more psyched if we had gotten the NBA Cup game versus
Yeah.
what happened in reverse. Just because I feel like years where you're out of the championship hunt, it is kind of nice to still be in the cup hunt. So if we
Mm-hmm.
can still win out, I think we have a chance at it. But I want to start with Anfernee Simons in this game.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. 25 points, majority of them coming in that second quarter. Super quiet second half from him. How much of this is just what we should expect from Anthony Simons at this point, where he can kind of go Anferno for a quarter at a time, but he's not going to be a consistent scorer throughout the game?
Um, Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it on the head there. I think that is kind of what to expect, or what I'm expecting going forward, is that he will have these stretches where he just absolutely goes off, keeps us in games, which I think is huge. But at the end of the day, I don't expect him to kind of maintain that throughout the course of a game necessarily. Um, Even though in Portland he was a starting point guard, and I think he is at that caliber in the NBA, I still kind of view him and his game and his play style as something that is more kind of moment dependent, kind of hot and cold, a little bit streaky. I think he still can be useful in those moments where his shot isn't falling necessarily. You saw in that second half, all of his points came in the first half. But in that second half, he was still drawing some coverage to him. He was getting some double teams thrown his way, which opened up other guys. And so if he's able to capitalize on those opportunities and pass out of those coverages to guys who are open off of that, I think we can still take advantage.
Is he capable of passing out of those opportunities? Is really the question.
It's a big if. It's a big if, yeah.
Yeah, because it does seem like in the quarters where he's not going completely ballistic and dropping 20 points in a quarter, it doesn't seem like there's a lot for him to do either on offense or defense. He's a good catch and shoot guy if he's just left wide open, but once you get 20 points in a quarter, you're not going to be left wide open for some time.
Yeah, and this is something that we had talked about in our last episode of kind of fourth quarter rotations and kind of if you're seeing something that's working throughout the game, certain rotations, certain lineups that are really working, do you want to mess with those just to bring in the guys who you think like on paper provide the best shooting or provide the best offense or something? And I'll be honest, wasn't thrilled when I saw him kind of coming in the fourth quarter after the run that those guys, the Ugo and the Jordan Walsh and Luka Garza, like they had put up some really good minutes. And Anfernee, I feel like he came in and we lost a lot of momentum there because his shot wasn't falling, and so that's kind of where you know really useful when he's feeling it, and when he's not, there are guys I'd rather have out there.
It it is the problem when you're it's great to be a catch and shoot guy, but when there's other catch and shoot guys who give you more in other areas, they're the guys I want out there. Both Jordan Walsh and Hugo hit their threes in this game, which if they can continue to do that, that's going to be huge. I mean, Hugo came out for 1 minute at the end of garbage time when the Magic scored, but before that, he was 12 minutes in the game and a plus 22 on a really close game. And just the energy he was giving us. Jordan Walsh hitting the dagger three, right before that, getting the dagger assist, being the main defender on Paulo Banchero, where you could see they were running multiple screens just to get Jordan Walsh off of Paulo. So two guys who are having that level of defensive impact and hitting their threes is going to make it tough to play Anfernee Simons in close games.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I think Simons provides value in ways. I don't view him as just a catch and shoot guy. I think that he is one of the few guys on this team right now that has proven capable of creating his own shot and creating opportunities for himself. I think that whole first half explosion was fueled by him not necessarily just catch and shooting, but finding, pull ups from three, step backs from three, finding a variety of ways to score that I think some of those other bench guys don't have in their bag just yet, or maybe never will. But again, I think I see him in that kind of sixth man, kind of pure scorer role, and those guys are really important to have on any team if you want to win games. But I think there's also a limitation of your sixth man who does nothing really but score. I mean, he plays some okay defense, he makes some mistakes, but if he's not scoring, then he's a little bit of a liability out there. And so those are the kind of just reading the situation, reading his momentum, where he's at, whether his shot is falling. And again, like, amazing what he did in that first half, kept us in the game. In the second half, would I have been fine if we didn't see him at all? Yeah, but you also don't know that his shot isn't going to fall in the second half. And so I think that's a tough thing to kind of figure out. But I thought the bench in this game, I think it was at least 50 bench points in this game. You mentioned Walsh and Ugo just absolutely dominated the energy, dominated the flow, created a lot of turnovers and fast break opportunities, and got the offense going in big ways. That was a lot of fun to watch.
I know we did the whole Hugo Gonzalez nickname thing last episode.
So here's the thing.
Okay.
I did write down, I've put some thought into it, and I have a bunch that I can run by you. If you want to save that for later, we can.
Let's do that quickly now, because I did think of another one.
Okay.
That I want to start calling him Who Gon' Do It.
Who gon' do Okay.
Because he just gets out there and he does stuff. The more expletive version would be Who Gon' Do Shit. That when you look at the bench and you go, who gonna do shit? It's Hugo.
Yeah. You know what? I don't hate that. I will say I was a little devastated at the end of the game. Luka Garza, which I'm sure we will get to, had a great performance tonight.
Huge Luka Garza game. He was at risk of losing minutes, I think, going into this game. And coming out, he's really cemented himself as the other center in the rotation.
Yeah. And I was personally heartbroken. Drew said that he had gotten a text at the end of the game, at the end of the broadcast. Drew had said he had got a text from his dad suggesting a nickname for Luka Garza, which was Garzilla. Okay. And I had on my list of nicknames for Hugo Gonzalez, Gonzilla. So I think that there's a little bit of too much overlap there. But here, I'm going to throw real quick the nicknames I came up with for Hugo Gonzalez. There was Gonzilla. Just because of the chaos he creates on the floor.
That makes me feel like he's gone a lot. Like, that feels like a guy who does, like, disappearing acts.
Okay, all right. So we'll give it to Luka Garza. He'll be Garzilla.
Garzilla, I'm all in on.
Okay, and then when you think about the force that Ugo kind of pushes on the floor, pressures on opposing offenses, just kind of creating energy, I have G-Force. Okay. I have... I found two that are in Spanish that I really liked. There's El Cerrojo, which means the lock, because he's just locking guys up. Or El Ladrón, which is the thief. There's also the Madrid Menace. Alternatively, the Madrid Missile or the Madrid Maestro.
I feel like when we do the Madrid ones, it's a little... Like, a lot of guys played for Real Madrid, and, like, Luka's the most famous of them.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but he's not from Spain.
That is true.
We'll come back to that. We'll figure some stuff out. I also do have, I did come up with some for the Nemes Keita fan club, if you want to do that at some point, but we can always circle around.
Yeah, let's talk about Nemes Keita a little bit. Fouled out of this one. Probably not his best game, but definitely held his own against a team that the last time we faced them, we really struggled with size. I was really surprised this was Luka Garza's kind of breakout game because on Friday he was 13 minutes, minus 24, 2 points, no rebounds, no assists. And it seemed like the center rotation for Orlando really just ate their lunch because they're always going to have a 7 footer and then two 6'10" guys out there. How do you think we were able to kind of deal with their size in this game?
I think specifically when it comes to Luka Garza and also a little bit with Nemise Keita, it was just running different actions to draw their bigs away from the basket. And I think that we saw like a lot of offensive rebounds in this game, which I thought was a good sign for us. I think we might have even beat Orlando in offensive rebounds or tied them at least. Um, and I think a lot of that was the actions that we drew up to get their bigs away from the basket, trying to switch on screens. Luka Garza, especially, his screening is just really, really good. And we saw a lot of
He's
him.
not tall, but he is wide. He can just make himself into a brick wall sometimes. And that's one of those skills that we need when we don't have the big man depth that some other teams have. I do think you're right that we saw a lot of match hunting in this game, especially for a regular season game. We're not used to seeing that much matchup hunting. And I think part of it is a result of playing a team back to back like this. And I know that was one of the points of emphasis that the NBA had this year, looking at the schedule, was trying to make more home and homes and like little mini series with teams matching up against one another so that it could feel a little bit more like a playoff series where you're playing the same team a couple times in a row.
Yeah, and I want to get your thoughts on that. I really enjoy that aspect of it. I really love that it brings more kind of strategy into play, that you get a couple days to kind of do more, like look over the scouting report and watch some film and figure out, look at the first game that you played against them. Like, not necessarily suggesting moving to full MLB style, like we're playing 3 games in a row against this team, but I really, really do enjoy the like that element of it of you have an opportunity to learn something and then very quickly implement it. And I think it does build a little bit of drama. There is a little bit of you lost that first game, you have an opportunity for payback right away. And I think that is, as a fan, that is something that is really exciting. So I like that element of it a lot.
As a fan, I do really like some aspects of it where I just get to hate Franz Wagner for a couple days. Like, if these were spread out, I would have forgotten that I hate Franz Wagner by the second game, but now I can come in and still have that energy. The part that I do not love about it is it does make your strength of schedule a little bit more luck dependent, where if you happen to see a team when they have some injuries or um, early in the season, you could get a very different team than what another team's seeing. So when they're kind of more spread out, everybody has a little bit more of an equal schedule. So one example of that is I think we got Philly's worst hit in those first 2 games against them, where we didn't have the scouting report on Edgecombe, and he was able to just fly by some guys. Where if we got those 2 games later in the season, where we kind of understood what was coming at us, and maybe he had hit his rookie wall at that point, we wouldn't have been so on our back heels. So I do think I enjoy it as a fan, but I do think there's some drawbacks to it when it comes to strengths of schedule.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a fair point. I think even now we have Philly coming up later this
Yeah.
week, and now we have that kind of going in. We know what Edgecombe is capable of, and having that little bit of advanced scouting report on him. Um, but yeah, I thought Tristan da Silva is someone who in this little mini series
He was
really stood out.
good.
He's good.
He was one that like you see him, and if he was on my team, I would love Tristan da Silva.
Yes. Yeah. And I think kind of what I'm looking for in terms of seeing guys like Ugo, seeing guys like Jordan Walsh force their way into the rotation with how well they're playing is kind of, oh, these guys can be like our Tristan da Silva types. Um, I also thought Jalen Suggs really impressed me in this game. I think we all know what he's capable of on the offensive end, but I thought he played some really good on ball defense. Even on guys when he was a little bit overmatched physically, I thought that his hands were active. He was staying in front of guys. I thought this was a game where I really walked away impressed with him. Yeah, this little mini series. I'm very impressed with the Orlando Magic. I expect them to be right there at the top of the East. Um, I think they just have so many weapons, and that's one of the reasons I'm very impressed and very pleased how we were able to play tonight, end to end, defensively, on the offensive end. I know that we had talked in our last episode about Derek White, and you wanted him to show a little bit more aggressiveness.
Big
I thought
Derek White game.
he came out in that first quarter firing, and I think after that really kind of fell back into where he's most comfortable of creating defensive opportunities that lead to quick buckets on the offensive end, and really shown in that regard. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah, I thought big Derek White game. He wasn't super hot. Like, he wasn't just draining threes or having a crazy shooting stretch. But you could see he hit a couple shots and then was much more aggressive going downhill. And even the times where he got into the paint and passed out, he was getting, 3, 4 steps further towards the basket than he was up until this game. And that didn't always translate to points. I think he ended with 17 in this game, which is still really good for,
21.
21.
Yeah.
Really good for like a third or fourth option. Even on the possessions where he didn't score, he was still being aggressive and looking to score before moving the ball around. So, really happy with Derek White in that one. Kind of a quiet Jaylen Brown game. I know he had 27. It seemed like a quiet 27, though.
Yeah, and I think this goes to it reminds me of I think there's a duality to Jaylen Brown, and we've been seeing the best of him in some games recently. In that last Orlando game, that we couldn't pull out the win, but even in the game before that against the Wizards, where he's a mid-range assassin. I think it can't be overstated how incredibly impactful his mid-range game is right now, how confident he feels in getting to those shots, how confident everybody else feels when he takes them. It's really, really impressive and a very effective part of his arsenal right now. But there's a he hasn't been embodying Jaylen Brown the first option in those games, and in this game there were flashes of it. There were moments where, I mean, offensively he is the first option, but there are moments where his game felt more like Jaylen Brown 1B, just without Jason Tatum on the floor. I think when I look at his numbers during a game or after a game, and I see like 10 of 24, that's kind of the stat line that I'm used to when he's playing 1B off of Jason Tatum and can't quite get it going. And so I think that there was just some element of it that part of it, I think he wasn't getting some calls that he really wanted. I think he was showing some frustration with the officiating. Um, but yeah, just
He's definitely not getting 1A calls, is
yeah.
one thing I've noticed. He's still getting the 1B calls. Not, I don't even think he's getting judged unfairly, but I think he wants to get the calls of a guy who's made all NBA teams and won a finals MVP and is the number one option on his team. And I just don't think he's really seen that way. I am getting a little concerned by his hesitancy to shoot threes. Because if he is going to go through a stretch where he's, letting Derek White playmake or letting Anfernee Simons go off, he needs to be ready to shoot a three when it gets moved to him. And in this game, there's a few moments where the ball swung to him, and last year's like 1B Jaylen Brown playing off of Tatum would have just taken the three. And this year, he seems a little bit more hesitant to shoot the three, really wants to take a few dribbles, get into his mid range, which has been super effective. But if we're going to get to an offense where he's playing off of guys and not responsible for everything, I think he's got to start taking a few more of those shots. and he started the year super hot from three. Through first 4 games, I think he was shooting like 60 something percent on threes, and he was really chucking them at that point. Then he hit that cold stretch in the Houston and Wizards game. I think he went 0 for 13 combined. Since then, he's been real hesitant to, unless he is wide open, to shoot a three. And I think if we're going to get the best version of a 1A Jaylen Brown, the 3 point shot has to be incorporated in there because now teams are starting to play a little back on him. They're starting to go under screens, and you can see he's not getting to the rim as much as he has in the previous games. And then he's just relying on the mid range, where he's been one of the best mid range shooters in the league this year, but that can't be the full gambit of his offense.
Yeah, I also noticed 1 for 4 from three tonight. That real hesitance, I think it is at this point just a comfort thing. I don't expect it to last necessarily, but I think right now he's just like, my mid range game is as good as there is in the NBA, and my 3 point shots just aren't falling. And I think I understand kind of taking a step back from that. But again, not being able to work that into the flow of the offense quite as much, where he has, again, a couple times gotten that ball, had an open three, and just been like, all right, I'm going to create a couple dribbles and move into that area that I'm so good from, that 15 kind of footer range. Um,
And
yeah,
he's still got 27 in this game, so it feels weird to kind of be. He got 27 and we won, so it's
yeah.
feels weird to be a little hard on him. Um,
For me,
but
it's
in
just
this
the
game,
efficiency. Like
the
last game, he
efficiency.
had 30 points on 28 shots. This game, 27 on 24 shots, and just kind of not getting to the line as much in this game. And again, I know he's frustrated and expressed that after the last Magic game with how the officiating has gone, but just wanting a little bit more kind of. Again, 10 of 24 for 27 points is just not the kind of line that you want to see from your 1A guy.
Yeah, and I think the efficiency in this game came from the Magic are just bigger and more physical than we are. And if you're Jaylen Brown and you're no in this game, you're always going to have a defender on you who's 3 to 4 inches bigger. The mid range, on paper, the mid range is not where you should be getting your points because whenever he was going in the mid range, it was against Paolo, it was against Tristan da Silva, it was against Franz.
I
We're
thought
all
Franz was the only
6'10".
one who gave him real trouble. I thought he was able to get his shot off well against even like a Wendell Carter. I thought he was getting his shot off pretty comfortably.
Wendell
Franz was
Carter, he was a
really
lot
frustrating
faster
him.
than
Yeah.
Paolo. He was able to get his shot off, and he made a lot of difficult shots over Paolo. But with Paolo's wingspan and height, he did have to like arc it way up to get those to go in, which he made them. He scored, we won, but I just would have liked to see him either take some of those to the basket or be able to shoot behind screens because he was um, getting those open, and it seemed like they were playing him, expecting him to shoot from the mid range, and he kind of walked into that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I one game sample size, but I did see some things that, again, just
And I'm sure he'll
hopefully
come
will
back.
just work itself out. Yeah, that 3 point shooting, getting him feeling more comfortable again. I think also part of it, seeing that we're able to create some offense without him, seeing these bench units thrive, seeing that we're able to create shots in transition, I think should give him a little bit more confidence where he doesn't have to feel as responsible for everything. I think we've talked about in previous episodes kind of whether it's him or Derek White or Peyton Pritchard of, okay, I've got a guy open. What's that guy going to do once he gets the ball? Probably nothing. So I might like just have to figure out how to create something on my own. I think as we start to see guys make the most of opportunities, create shots for themselves, I thought very happy with how much every game I'm seeing a little bit more an extra possession or two where Hugo's allowed to handle the ball a little bit.
I like all of them.
Yeah,
Like
they're
it's
all great.
they're all
They're
great.
all great. Yeah.
There's never a time where Hugo handles the ball and I'm like, oh, why'd they let him do that?
Yeah.
Some of it
And so
looks by accident. Like he has a very like like early Manu Ginobili style, where he just kind of does stuff and runs into guys, but then it works out in the end. So,
And I think
he'll
he's
run
got
into
good
three
vision.
guys, do a Euro step, and then Cato will just be open. Or he'll
Yes.
do a spin move, and then Josh Minot will be there. He just kind of throws momentum in actions at the defense, and things work out in the end for him.
Yeah. So I think, again, seeing things like that, seeing improvement from those guys and more kind of self-sufficient offense from our bench guys should hopefully give the Derek Whites, the Peyton Pritchards, the Jaylen Browns a little bit more confidence that they don't have to carry all of the load and they can kind of not sit back and wait, but like let opportunities come to them rather than feeling like when I'm on the floor, if I want to score, I have to create every opportunity for myself. And building a little bit more flow within the offense that way is something that I'm looking forward to. And again, I think will work itself out. Very quiet Peyton Pritchard game. Very quiet Josh Minot game. He's been on an unbelievable tear. Again, not putting up crazy points or anything, but just impacting the game a lot. In this game, no points, 2 rebounds, only 16 minutes, uh, which he's been getting, closer to 25, 30 in recent games. Still impactful in his minutes on the floor, still kind of providing a presence, but I think that's a testament to just how impressive Jordan Walsh and Ugo were in this game that they demanded that many minutes. Jordan Walsh, 26 minutes in this game, starter minutes, and was on the floor in clutch time. Hit the dagger three to seal the game.
Great
Um,
ball mover. He was making decisions really quickly out there. I think we saw what the idealized version of him was coming in as a prospect. Because when he was playing at Arkansas, he was the fifth option on that starting five. And he was really just on the floor to move the ball, play shutdown defense, go for rebounds, just be this long, chaotic force who, when he was open, could make a shot, but you were never driving offense through him. And I think that's why a guy who wasn't necessarily an NBA prospect going into college was just on this stacked Arkansas team, such a good role player there that he was able to get drafted to the Celtics. Um, so I could definitely see him kind of reprising that role in some of our lineups where as soon as he touches it, he knows he's either shooting or moving it. He's never kind of coming up with his own thing. And that half second where he just moves the ball when he touches it has is helpful.
yeah, I think the thing that again everybody's gonna the thing that is going to be taken away from this game in a lot of respects is going to be his three and the fact that he earned his way into being on the floor in that last couple minutes.
Well, the assist right before that to Derek White
And that's the
was
thing is
equally as big, I think.
6 rebounds and 4 assists in this game. I thought was just as impactful, if not more, than that final three. I think the offensive rebound, he just creates opportunities. 2 steals. I think like again, just out of kind of chaos. I don't know if he's creating the chaos or just whenever there's chaos on the floor, I expect Jordan Walsh to be one of those guys who's just gonna thrive and gonna lead to good things for this team. Um,
And I think
so
building that
yeah,
trust is big. Because earlier in the year, when someone would drive and Jordan Walsh was on the perimeter, you could see them go, should I take a bad
yeah,
shot or should I pass it to Jordan Walsh? Where now, if they pass it to Jordan Walsh, they know they're either getting it kicked back or he's going to make the right play. So I think the more time he has on the court where he's making the right plays and taking those right shots, the smoother you'll see the offense flow.
yeah. Um, yeah, Sam Hauser, another kind of meh performance. And at this point, it's just I just enjoy the minutes more when it's Walsh and Ugo and Minot, and that's just kind of what it is. I thought he played Hauser played reasonable defense, got a couple rebounds, but doesn't feel like he has that same capability in a sense of like when Walsh never has the ball in his hands for more than 5 seconds, and that's not what I'm looking for from him, and it's not what I'm looking for from Hauser either. But it feels like if it's Hauser, it's just getting kind of passed along. We're playing just like catch along the outside of the perimeter, and Walsh is looking for different types of passes that open up more opportunities. Same with Minot, same with Ugo. Minot can drive a little bit better. It just kind of, when Hauser's shot isn't falling, I just am not feeling him on the floor a whole lot.
Yeah, he's difficult to notice when his shot's not falling. One thing I will say was I was looking at our lineup data today, and our best plus minus lineup with minimum 40 minutes played together is the starters with Sam Hauser in the Josh Minot spot. That his gravity as a shooter is still impactful in some ways that a Josh Minot and a Jordan Walsh aren't able to replicate at this point, even if they are doing more when they're on the floor. That teams still stay really close to Hauser and still will close out in a panic when he gets the ball. So it does, just him being on the floor does allow Jaylen Brown to have that little bit extra space when he's operating the mid range. And it creates driving lanes just by his reputation. But I do agree that I enjoy the minutes more where we have those kind of hustle wings out there who are just causing havoc. The other thing Hauser brings is he's a little bit more stout than those guys. When he goes for a rebound, he's heavier. Like he looks like he can kind of stand in the way of a bigger guy when going to the rim, where sometimes Josh Minot can kind of get pushed off his spot for those.
Yeah, and I think that's an area where I'm impressed with Jordan Walsh because he showed a lot of strength today. Again, he was giving
So much
Paolo
stronger than last
nightmares.
year.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that I also really appreciated is even when he's getting kind of beat to the spot of a rebound, he can just rip the ball out of someone's hands. And that I thought he did a couple times today, which is great for just, again, creating quick opportunities, second chance points, all of that. And then Luka Garza. How are we feeling about Luka Garza? Because he showed us some stuff that he's had in his bag, and we've talked about his screening, and he spaces the floor a little bit, but just a different performance from him tonight.
Different performance, really good touch. I felt like we were giving him the ball a little bit more in that 8 to 12 foot range, and he was able to kind of just drop a few in.
Those little push shots are just fun. They're just fun.
They are, and I still doubt them when he goes up to shoot, but now that he's making them, I would like to see him be a little bit more aggressive from three, or at least pretend to be a little bit more aggressive from three, because he's always hit a good percentage, but it does seem like when he catches it on the perimeter, he makes it clear with his body language that he's looking to set a pick and handoff. Where if he just squared up for a second, I feel like he would force a closeout, which would create a lot more room. The other thing I noticed about him is I think it's rare for me to say this, but I feel like if I could coach his running, I could get him up and down the floor a second or two faster. Because when he just runs, he puts his whole posture just faces the floor.
Yeah. And for
Um,
our audience at home, Jeremy is was an all-state cross-country runner. Uh,
um, yeah, I wasn't trying to brag. I think a lot of people could teach Sam Hauser how to run a little bit better.
or
Um,
Luka Garza too.
oh, Luka Garza, sorry.
Sam
Sam
Hauser,
Hauser is actually
you're
pretty
running
good.
fine.
Sam Hauser can run fine. But I remember Scalabrini talked about um, where he really saw the transition in his career is when he started focusing on speed drills. And I think if we could just get Luka Garza a little bit faster, like doing some speed ladder drills, working on his form with his running, then if he's not trailing behind the play, he's going to be a much more impactful player.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that he's best at is kind of the release on screens where he starts drifting towards the basket. If you can do that a little bit more explosively, I think it's just a little bit easier to get that ball over the defense and into his hands. And he's shown tonight, especially, that he's able to finish around there. Um, Keita as well. I think we talked about in the last game, and it does seem like something that they looked at and implemented. They were trying to find their bigs on rolls more, and it wasn't always successful. There were a few turnovers where we kind of threw up a lob when it wasn't a fully open Nemes Keita or Luka Garza, but we were trying to find those moments and those opportunities. There were a few times again where they released and I thought they were wide open and we just hesitated for a half second. But that does seem like something that they're working on developing and building more chemistry there.
I
Um,
thought there were a lot less opportunities, and we hit the opportunities that were there, where they just have so much size. Um, with Jonathan Isaac, with Wendell Carter, who's their backup center with the beard in this one?
Goga Batazzi.
Goga
Jonathan
Batadze.
Isaac only 4 minutes as well tonight.
Yeah. I think that's the Tristan Da Silva effect was
He's
just
just
stealing his
he's
minutes. But when you're
um
always having three power forward or center sized guys out there, it really junks up the paint in a way where it's harder to throw those roll passes. And I think when we're going up against smaller teams, it's going to be more of Nemes Keita's night.
yeah, I think what I was looking for a little bit and what I saw is I wanted to see more of those lobs coming from the top of the key. Like directly after setting the roll, Garza or Keita would release and have an open lane to the basket, and I wanted to see the ball just come over the top before there were any defenders in the paint, and it looked like we were waiting a little bit. There were at least one or two turnovers I saw. I think it was a Derek White had that roll, created a little bit of separation, and then Derek drove into the paint and tried to lob it from there, and it just got picked off because at that point there were too many bodies in the paint. And so I want to see more of those passes coming immediately after the screen release, just before there's a chance for the defense to collapse a little bit. But again, it does seem like that's something that they've picked up on and they want to create more of those roll opportunities. And we saw with Luka Garza tonight, like when those are working, like they're working. He was 7 of 8 from the field. So, yeah, I mean, just it does feel I'm feeling a lot more just like stability and solid kind of play from our bigs, which again was kind of everyone's biggest question mark going into the year.
Yeah, I think the problem with Garza is it's tough to get him the ball. He's listed at 6'10". He looks like a 6'9", 6'8" out there. He doesn't, maybe he slouches, but he doesn't look
Well, he's
like
facing the floor when he's
he's
running, so
always facing the floor when he runs. So that might be part of it.
yeah.
But when he's being guarded by, two legit 7-footers the whole game, and he's not the springiest center, it's really tough to just lob it over and have him catch it. When if
Yeah.
you have Numis Keita with a guard on him, you can just kind of throw it up and he'll jump, catch, finish. Luka Garza almost needs to either get an offensive rebound or have another play happen that gets him a mismatch to get the ball in a good enough position to, hit that push shot or get a putback. And when we're playing a super chaotic game like this, where there's a ton of deflections and it's going back and forth, he seems to be able to find his spots where he can, get his back into a mismatch or just kind of get open at the right moment, which is really good to see. But it's kind of hard to set a play for Luka Garza. And with the other talented guys on this team, I don't see us doing that all that much.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need to be drawing up plays for him. I think it is just I'm watching him release from some of those screens at the top of the key and he is like immediately open and it's unless we're doing like a side bounce pass, the only way to get him the ball there is to kind of go over everything. And again, it's just can we get him a little bit either figure out how to add some agility to his game where he's able to go get those balls, or just like finding ways to get him there, to get the ball there when he's open because he is just damn. He sets a screen and for like a second you're like the world is open to Luka Garza. And then it's just about putting the ball in his hands, which again, we don't need him to be a number one, two, three, or fourth option in terms of scoring, but
If
it's
he
nice to
can
see.
if he can hold up defensively like he did tonight, and keep setting those screens, I'll be perfectly happy with Luka Garza.
Yeah.
Uh, Next thing I wanted to ask you about Jaylen Brown this year. What do we think his ceiling is in terms of all NBA and end of season awards? Coming into the year, I know I told you that my hope was a fifth place MVP finish. That I thought with the increased usage, him having his own team, he could kind of finally get some of that respect
Yeah.
that used to be split between him and Tatum. Tatum's out this year, which does open up an All NBA first team slot.
Hmm.
What do we think he needs to do to finish getting MVP votes, being in the first team? Is that even realistic for him?
So I don't think it is, but I don't think that's his fault necessarily. I think if Jaylen Brown has the ideal 1A season for him, um, in my head, what that looks like is probably like hovering around 30, maybe as high as 32 points per game, and probably like 6 rebounds, 6 assists. And I think part of where he doesn't have, it's
That'd be
not
an amazing
unfair.
season.
It'd be an amazing season, but when you look at just, it's a different NBA than it used to be. I think numbers and stats are really inflated right now compared to where they used to be, where 32, 6, and 6, 10, 15 years ago, obviously that guy's an MVP candidate. Now you just look at the counting stats of guys who are in front of him, and it's like he can't compete with guys who can score just as well, with Luka Doncic, with an SGA, with a Giannis, with a Jokic even, or Wemby this year, who are also just insane number. Like, again, 10 years ago, the idea of averaging a triple double was unheard of. Oscar Robertson had done it, and that was it in 40 years. And it seems like since Russell Westbrook was able to do that in the last decade, it's just exponentially increased in numbers. And now it's like, would anybody be surprised if Luka finishes the season averaging 32, 9, and 12? Like, I don't think so. I think Giannis, like, if he has
Yeah.
kind of more spacing and threats around him, he's getting his at least 10 rebounds, and he can get 10 assists if he wants to. And so I think it's just based on virtue of his playmaking ability. Jaylen just isn't that kind of passer, where he's able to just create or find every single hole the way that some of these guys can. He doesn't have the physical size to go grab every single rebound the way that some of these guys can. And so, just on counting numbers, on counting stats, I don't think he holds up there. Um, I do think it's also difficult for him in terms of, again, especially in the MVP conversation, it has to factor in, or in traditionally outside of that Russell Westbrook season, it's always kind of figured in team, how well a team is doing, and standings and rankings and all of that. And unless this team ends up maybe a top 3 seed in the East, I just don't think there's going to be the team success around him to justify it. I think it would have to be a pretty much perfect combination of the best counting stats he's ever had and this team placing in the top 3, for him to end up. And again, just because there's such a depth of talent in the league, I think it's tough to see him getting a ton of, like, the way Wemby's been playing, the way Giannis has been playing, Luka. I mean, SGA is going to SGA all over the place. So I think a fifth place MVP finish is maybe achievable, but it's tough. And I think for some of the same reasons, All NBA, I think it's fair to expect him to make second team. Um, I think
Second
first team
team's
might be
also
out of
going to
reach.
be tough. Um, Especially because I think his big opportunity is that all the credit goes to him this season.
Yeah,
And
that
if we're a
doesn't go to
top three
Ugo.
scene, that doesn't go to Hugo. Hugo also needs some credit for his rookie of the year buzz. Um, but part of the problem with that is he doesn't have the same team Jason Tatum had last year. You know, he doesn't
Mhm.
have the Drew Holiday. He doesn't have the Kristaps Porzingis. So if we finish with around the same record as we did last year, I think he definitely would be in an MVP conversation, even if he doesn't have the most eye popping numbers, just because He's shown a lot of leadership over this team. He defends the best player every night, and he's the driver of our offense. But I don't see this team having the same record we did last year. And if we drop significantly from last year, especially if we're in the play-in mix, then he took over the team and it decreased, 15 to 20 wins, which is a much harder argument to make. I think that the four guys who were all NBA with Tatum last year, SGA, Luka, Giannis, and Jokic, are almost just locked in from the beginning of the season to be all NBA first team again, which leaves one spot open. Um, if Wemby stays healthy, he's going to make a strong case for it. Um, Guys at the top of the East, I mean, if Cleveland goes on a crazy run, it's going to be Donovan Mitchell. If if the Bulls stay this high, like if there was a 1/8 the way through the season All NBA awards, I think Josh Giddey would be up there, which is crazy to say, but
Yeah, Josh Giddey's doing some wild stuff in Chicago.
that's why we don't do 1/8 of the way through the season awards.
All NBAs. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think Paolo is going to have an argument as well.
Struggled a little bit to start the season, but he's definitely going to be in the mix for some of the All NBA teams, especially if this Magic team goes on a run. Like I think we both kind of expect them to. Uh, he's going to be up there, but I do think that we should expect Jaylen to finish somewhere in the All NBA conversation and making another All Star team. I think he's only made one All NBA third team so far in his career. Um, so this is still an opportunity for him to kind of gain some national notoriety.
Yeah, and I do see him like it feels right to me for him to be an all NBA second team guy. I kind of see him in that category of like I don't know. I think Anthony Edwards is becoming quickly like a face of the league kind of guy. I don't think Anthony Edwards has like a ton more kind of talent or ability than Jaylen Brown. That's kind of around where I put them in that kind of category where I don't expect Anthony Edwards to make a first team All NBA. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he makes a second team. And that's kind of where I'm feeling about Jaylen Brown um, in that kind of like Kevin Durant range. Um,
Kevin Durant's also balling out
yeah,
this year. I mean, he's going
he
to be in the
is, but I don't,
conversation.
and that's
Steph's
kind of
still in the conversation. I think the only chance is if certain guys don't make the game criteria. Like Luka's already missed a handful of games. I think LeBron at this point is probably out of the All NBA conversation just because he's been out with the sciatica so far this season, and he's going to take some rest days later on.
yeah. If he meets the game criteria, I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a third team. Just kind of legacy, and I think he'll come back and have an impact. But again, sciatica's also like I just went through sciatica before I had my back surgery. Sciatica's a bitch. Like it is incredibly difficult. I can't imagine having like bad sciatica and trying to play competitive basketball games. So that's an injury that I'm keeping my eye on and kind of trying to see because it's difficult to manage unless you have surgery. It's just like physical therapy basically. And so seeing what his timeline on return is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron has been able to just power through so many painful injuries in his career. We almost take it for granted now. Like he's
Yeah.
played with slip discs in his back. Um, there was the Heat series where he had the quad spasms, which if you've ever had quad spasms are like insanely painful. Um, so I mean, he's built different, so we'll see how he returns. But yeah, I think All NBA second team is a good measuring stick for the success of Jaylen Brown's season. I still think there's a chance they don't give it to him if we're a play-in team or below, just out of kind of a guy who led his team to a fifth seed is probably going to get it over him.
Yeah, and I think this is why I think I expect him to get to a second team is I think you and I are both pretty optimistic in general about this Celtics team. I don't see five or six teams in the East that are going to be better than this Celtics team. and that's like probably a controversial take, just given kind of our lack of kind of frontline names, our big depth. If Kata gets hurt, that all kind of falls apart. But like right now, it just seems like we're on a trajectory. This just is reminding me a lot of those like Isaiah Thomas
Yeah.
Celtics teams, where it's just kind of like, no, they don't have the most talent. No, they have like kind of one guy who they go to in the fourth quarter. Like, no, they don't. But like, we're already starting to see these kind of like hidden gem guys of like,
The
we're pulling
chemistry's
out
come a
clutch
long way in 8
wins.
games. I'll say that.
Yeah,
I
we're
do
pulling out
think
clutch wins against a better Orlando team, not because of Jaylen Brown becoming like the best player in the world in this game, but because Jordan Walsh and Hugo Gonzalez were plus 15, plus 20 kind of guys. And like that is a recipe that is sustainable for the rest of the season.
I I still think I might disagree. I think I'm a little higher on the depth of the Eastern Conference than a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I think the Cavs are really legit.
Cavs are legit.
The
I think the Knicks will get regular season
I think
wins,
the
and I
Knicks
think
will
the
get
Magic are good.
the Magic are good. The Pistons have been on a tear so far this year. It
But
looks like
against weaker
Cade's a lot
teams,
better. Yeah, but just given how they looked last year and just their depth of shooters and defenders, Jalen Duren
yeah,
might be a
22
top
and
three
22
big
the other. Yeah.
in the league right now. His ability to defend every position on the court and be an elite rim protector and grab like 18 boards a game is kind of insane to me. I think the Bucks are going to make a run in the playoffs this year. So far, this might be Giannis's best season. His development shooting the three, it's not going to stay this high. He's shooting above 40% from three, taking a lot too.
Yeah.
But if he can keep part of that, I also think Ryan Rollins, their new
Has
point guard,
been
is
a
legit.
sensation for them. Yeah.
17 and 6, good defender. They're a really deep team too. Like their second unit comes in and keeps them alive in games. Um, and that's 5 teams right there. The Bulls, we'll see how much of this is real, but they're just off to such a strong start in terms of standing that they'll probably still finish above us just because they have such a head start over us.
I mean, I think we're 4 losses behind them right now, which like 12 games into the season. We've got 70 games left. I think the Bulls are going to come back down to earth, and I think the Pistons are going to come back down to earth. And again, that doesn't mean I would not be surprised if either of those teams finishes above us, but I am an optimist, and I do kind of just feel like the way we're trending is that we're going to develop more chemistry and build more of a defensive identity and kind of figure out the offense as we go. And then it really is just kind of, it also depends what happens with Anfernee Simons, and if our bigs, our two bigs right now, can stay healthy. And if we can add a third somewhere along the way, or if Xavier Tillman comes back healthy at some point. Um, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. But I don't think that
I'm
the
still
Celtics
very
team
high
is a
on Amari
bottom of the.
Williams.
I'd
Scored
love to see him at some point, just
21
because.
and 14 last night, 10 of 12 shooting, I think 2 blocks, 1 steal. He just looks like he's not a G League player when you see him playing G League. And he was a 5 year guy, came out of Kentucky. So I think he could be just ready to go if one of those guys go down. I'm kind of suspicious that we're keeping him in the G League in case we have an injury later in the year to kind of save some of his two-way games for that. Um, Next thing I wanted to talk about was Anfernee Simons.
Yeah,
I've been hearing a lot of people just kind of pencil in either a deadline trade for Anfernee Simons or letting him walk away in the offseason. He seems to me like a really tough guy to trade and a really tough guy to tell what his value is because he can go off for 20 and a quarter like we saw tonight. And he does have the kind of shot creation that normally teams pay a lot of money for and will give up assets for. But also, he has such a low defensive reputation around the league because a lot of teams kind of remember the Portland version of him, where he has gotten improved some, especially on ball, since coming to the Celtics. But we're also having entire halves where we play him 2 minutes, or he disappears in games for us. So I don't know how much we're raising his trade value around the league. So
That's kind of what I've been keeping my eye on these past few games is like, what are we doing with Anfernee Simons, and does that kind of give any clues on what we're thinking for his future? And it does seem like games like today, I'm like, this is great, not just because he kept us in this game, but because it does give us something to kind of pitch to other teams. And then that second half happens, and it's, he's a tough player to kind of get a good value on. I think you're right about that.
yeah, and I'm not team tank this year. I know some people want us to sell off assets and
I just
just
don't
kind
think
of
we can lose enough games for a tank to be successful unless we sit Jaylen Brown for the season. Like it's just not happening. So I don't want to. We can do like a halfway tank and get a 12th pick, maybe, and I just don't feel like that's worth it.
yeah, I'm not saying we tank, but I am saying any moves we make this year shouldn't be to win this year. They should be with an
Agreed.
eye on winning next year. And if we don't plan on re-signing Anfernee Simons, which it's hard to see a world where we do re-sign Anfernee Simons, because I think there's two possibilities. One, he plays really well, and then we want to re-sign him, but we can't afford him. Or he plays poorly, and then we don't want to re-sign him, even though we could afford him.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of reason to look at a trade, and I did come up with a few
Hmm.
that I don't love any of them, just because I do want to make sure they're kind of realistic to the other team, and I don't think any is gonna blow us away with assets. I started this thinking I was gonna try to just get an expiring and a first for him. And in the off season, I know there was some talk about Vooch for Anfernee Simons, but I just don't think with the way Chicago's playing that they're going to entertain that at all. Uh,
Something would have to happen pretty dramatically between now and the trade deadline for sure.
so I came up with a few. I'm gonna try to flash these on the screen, but for you, I'll read them aloud. I came up with a couple to send him to the Bucks. They really need some shot creation when Giannis isn't on the floor. They also could really use some outside shooting. So the first one, which is just a two-team trade, would be Anfernee Simons and Xavier Tillman to the Bucks for Kyle Kuzma, Jericho Sims, Cole Anthony, and the swap in 2027.
Okay.
Now, I do like Jericho Sims is just an energy big. He can really rebound, springy guy. I think Cole Anthony can kind of do an impression of what we've been getting from Anfernee Simons. So I think they could help us this year. Kyle Kuzma, really just a contract at this point. I don't know that I even want him playing over some of the wings we've discovered this year. He definitely has a much higher offensive ceiling than them. And he is signed through next year. So he's 22 million this year and next year.
Yeah. I don't know who said I that might be both teams say no.
Interesting. Yeah. I think
I
Ryan
mean
Rollins breaking out for the
that's the
Bucks.
thing. And I think the fact that Cole Anthony can do 80 to 90% of what Anthony Simons can do, I think the Bucks just don't need it badly enough. And I think
Yeah, he hasn't been playing a ton for them. Neither has Jericho Sims, just because they've been getting more out of other guards and other bigs. Um, so it could be a chance for them to honestly just move on from Kuzma and get a shot at having a guy who can lead a bench unit so that you can keep Ryan Rollins and Giannis together because they do seem to play really well. Um, the
I
other
think the
idea I had off of the Bucks was a three-teamer
okay.
where we send that pick swap, Kyle Kuzma, and a minimum to the Nets with other assets of ours for a Nick Claxton. so we don't have to give up as many picks as if we were just sending Anfernee Simons. Um, it would probably still be at least our 2031 unprotected with the Bucks 2027 swap.
Yeah, I like that deal for us. I mean, if it gets us Nick Claxton for one first round pick and Anford, like I don't hate that for us. I think Brooklyn, the question is, could they get more elsewhere for Nick Claxton? And I think that's kind of where you hit the hurdle. If we can make that deal, I make it tomorrow. But again, I just don't know
The
whether
Bucks,
Brooklyn
I think,
on an open market and whether the Bucks are kind of yeah. I think it also, and you alluded to this in the first trade proposal, it really depends on because Anfernee Simons is not a bad get for what the Bucks are trying to do. If you're again building a bench unit for those non-Giannis minutes, somebody who can come in and again just drop 15 and a quarter, drop 20 and a quarter,
and be a great
and they
off-ball shooter, which they do need more of around Giannis.
yeah, and would be able to again he is expiring but they'd be able to extend him and it would kind of fit into their whole salary cap situation. I think it does. A lot of this also depends on like how confident are they that Giannis is there next year 2 years from now, and that's kind of the thing with the Bucks that makes it a little tricky. um
I
but
think
I do
they're so deep in at this point after the Miles Turner trade that I don't think they're going to be holding on to the swaps they have the next few years. I mean, they're already so depleted that that's really only a chance to move up a few spots. And it's only interesting if you think Giannis is going to demand out.
yeah.
Um, Next team I looked at was the Mavs.
Okay.
They're not off to a good start. They could really use a ball handler, and I think there's a chance. This is probably if Nico gets fired by the deadline, which I think is quite possible.
Yeah.
So the money is Anfernee Simons, Baylor Shireman, and Xavier Tillman for Klay Thompson and Daniel Gafford.
Whoa. Okay.
I'm saying 3 seconds from our end
Mm-hmm.
because I think Daniel Gafford does have real value, even if they are looking to get off the Klay Thompson contract, which has been rumored since he's fallen out of their rotation at this point. Daniel Gafford's on a 4 year, $14 million a year deal,
Yeah.
which is a really good value for a starting center.
And I like what he does as a center.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Daniel Gafford. I think Nico Harrison, because he was one of Nico's kind of big finds, would be less likely to shop him than if a new GM came in and was just kind of rebuilding around Cooper Flag. But if that happened, this probably wouldn't be their first trade. I would look to shop AD first. But if they're looking to pick up um, kind of valuable assets, Baylor Shireman, second draft guy to give a shot on a rebuilding team. 3 seconds is decent value when you're also getting off a contract.
Yeah, I don't hate that one. Again, I'm a big Daniel Gafford fan, and I think Klay Thompson is still a NBA player. Obviously, not the Golden State Klay Thompson, but especially if he's able to still shoot the three at even just on catch and shoots, I think would be a valuable part of what we do offensively, just in terms of a guy that Derek White and Peyton Pritchard and Jaylen Brown don't have to second guess passing to off of drives. Um, I like that trade a lot. I think Dallas probably does ask for more. I think they want a first at least, even if they're trying to get off Clay's contract. I think, yeah, I mean, I don't hate that deal. I think Dallas probably needs a little bit more, but I might be willing to do. Again, it is kind of we don't have the draft assets that we used to just throw around, so it
Yeah.
becomes is Daniel Gafford going to be our guy that we're like using those assets on, and that if we can get them for just a couple second rounders along with those contracts, I'm fine with it. If it costs more, I think it becomes a more difficult conversation, and I think it probably does require a little bit more on our end.
The next one I had was the two rumors that came out this offseason were that we had discussed Anfernee Simons trades with the Bulls and with the Pistons. I
The
know
Pistons is what I had.
the Pistons had fallen apart in the offseason because we wanted Anfernee Simons for Jaden Ivey, and they wanted this year's pick included for value. I don't think at this point we're getting Jaden Ivey back.
Hmm.
Even though he's been injured for a lot of this year, I think his upside is just too high for them to give up on him for a guy that's not going to be as big a piece of their team moving forward. I do think they see Anfernee Simons as a guy who would fit next to Cade, as a guy who can kind of play the one, but really just be a flamethrower
Off
shooter.
ball shoot. Yeah.
So, what do you think of no picks, but just Anfernee Simons for Karis LeVert, Paul Reed, and Javonte Green? We would need to cut some guys after this because we would be at least one over on uh, roster spots.
Yeah. I mean, a
But it
homecoming
would
for
save us
Javonte
5 million.
Green.
So it's not like we would be. It would bring us below the first apron at least.
Yeah. I haven't looked at it. What kind of contract is Paul Reed on?
2 years, 5 million a year.
Okay. I think Paul Reed is the piece in that thing for me.
He's kind of fallen out of their rotation.
Yeah, but
He's played. Yeah, they have a
they
deep
have
big man rotation.
yeah, and so that's kind of where
Karis
I had been
LeVert
playing
can
around
do
with.
what Anfernee Simons does for us. Maybe a little bit more defense. Not as high level a shooter. He's another guy that's all three of these guys have really fallen out of Detroit's rotation. So for them, they're kind of giving up guys who don't play for a guy who would play. And for us, it's a way to replace him in the short term, save some money, and um, kind of shore up our big man rotation a little bit.
Yeah, it's not a bad deal. I'm kind of ambivalent on it.
It's a last minute at the trade deadline deal, probably. Where if we
Yeah,
can't get assets, this might be like a break glass in
yeah.
case of emergency. But I also just, in my heart, I feel that Anfernee Simons has played too well for a deal that's break glass in case of emergency.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I some of these trades I would make, some of them like would need alteration, I think. Some of them the other team would want more or I would want more. Ultimately, I think just become much more comfortable over the past couple games of let's just play out the season with Anfernee Simons and let him walk and open up that trade exception for what was it, $22 million from Porzingis, I believe. Uh,
I have some trade exception PTSD. Just because so few trade exceptions really get used. They're kind of these things we talk about a lot, and maybe we use, a portion of it to sign some fringe guy. But given that we just shed all of these salaries last year to avoid paying deep into the luxury tax, I don't know that the dream scenario of this offseason letting Anfernee Simons walk, re-signing, extending our guys, then using the mid-level exception for like 14 million, then going out and using the trade exception to get us back into the aprons is really going to happen.
Well, I think what we did by getting under the apron is now we get a fresh start on the repeater tax, which is really why we had to deconstruct our whole roster.
So to get a restart on the repeater tax, we would need to get below the um, tax line this year, which I believe we're currently 10 or 11 million over. And we would need to
Okay.
be under the tax next year, where if we spend 2 years under the tax, then the trade exception expires anyway.
I thought it was one. Okay.
It's 2 years within a 5 year stretch. And
Okay. I
yeah.
thought it was you had to do three out. Okay. In that case, yeah.
So if ownership's um kind of mandate is to get under the tax this year, that means Anfernee Simons is getting traded and probably Sam Hauser is getting traded.
Yeah.
Because we can only because Anfernee Simons is making 27 million a year. We can only take back 19 as the lowest for him.
Hmm.
That would still leave us 3 or 4 million over the tax, which would need another contract to go out. So either it would be Hauser or, make a trade for Anfernee Simons soon and then make another trade at the deadline.
Yeah.
There's some things we're just above the first apron right now. So there's some things like waive and extend Xavier Tillman's contract that could get us below the first apron, which would then open up that trade exception, that mid-level next year.
Hmm.
The tax would take a little bit more work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think making the money work is difficult. I think ultimately it is, again, like this year, I'm not viewing it as a tank year. I'm not viewing it as this year doesn't matter or anything. But ultimately, like the goal is let's build the best team for next year when
Yep.
Jason Tatum is fully healthy and coming back. Sam Hauser would, again, this year has not been super impressive, but has also not been in a system that is super set up for him to thrive in the same way that he has in the past. Is a weapon that like I would want around Jason Tatum. Like, he's ordinarily going to be a 40+% 3-point shooter. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Even if he's not getting as many minutes or playing as well this year, he is kind of, next year, right now we're kind of scrapping for wins and scrapping to kind of figure out an identity without Jason Tatum. Jordan Walsh and Ugo Gonzalez, I think, are valuable, and having found them and seen all the things that they can do are going to provide some more avenues to winning this year. I don't think around Jason Tatum they're going to be as effective kind of weapons as like off-ball catch and shoot guys. And so that's
Yeah.
where
So I
it
think
would hurt. It would hurt to lose Sam Hauser.
it would, and that's part of the reason I'm looking at Anfernee Simons trades now, because I think kind of the least painful route I would see to getting below the tax this year would be if we made that trade with Detroit, but add Xavier Tillman in from our end, so we save 7 million, and
Yeah.
then at the deadline we flip um who is in that trade. Then we flip Karis LeVert at the deadline for a slightly less expensive guard, just to slip the tax a little bit. Um, and then next year, we still have Paul Reed and Javante Green as kind of deep bench guys to help us out, plus um, the mid level and keeping Sam Hauser and extending our guys.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, like the mid level and like if we trade away Hauser, we're looking for Sam Hauser with that kind of mid level anyway. And so I think what we can, yeah, I mean, I don't hate the Pistons trade. Again, it
Who's
doesn't feel.
Well, first before I move on, did you have any trades?
I had toyed around with just kind of a straight swap of like Detroit maybe wants some more playmaking. Let's just get some size in for this season just to kind of like help create like, and I was just going to do a straight like Anfernee Simons for Tobias Harris, just expiring for expiring, just get us some
He's
more
played
size.
too
And
well for them. I don't know if
I
they're
mean,
going to
he's
give up
also
their
he's
starter.
on a sprained ankle and hasn't played the last couple
Yeah.
games, and they just have so much big man depth,
If I'm
and
Detroit, I'm
size.
trying to re-sign Tobias Harris this offseason. Because he brought a culture with him there. Like, he really kind of turned up his play, was kind of a leader to their young guys, has been a starting caliber power forward for them who plays well with Cade. You don't probably re-sign him at 25 million a year, but if he's willing to re-sign long term at 15 million, then you definitely pull that switch. The next thing
Yeah,
I was
I
going
think
to
it is
ask,
just how much depth they have at that. Like Isaiah Stewart, now you have Jalen Duran. Like it's just there's a lot going on in Detroit, which like is good for them.
they're
But
playing
he's
well, so I don't
also
think they're
how old is Tobias Harris at this point? I think he's got to be like
34,
34.
something like
Yeah, it's
that.
just yeah. So signing him to a long term deal, I'd just be like,
I think if
he's
they could
had
get something
some.
of real long-term value for him, they would have to consider it, but I just don't know if they see Anfernee Simons as that.
Yeah, yeah.
Who is your target for the mid-level exception? Because it's one thing we've talked a lot about this season is making sure we have the ability to open that up to bring in a center of some kind to kind of fix this team for next year. But we rarely talk about who that center is going to be. And there's not always a starting caliber center available for the mid level each year. So have you thought about who our target is? I have two.
Um, Let me hear your two. I'm gonna check some contract stuff real
Do you,
quick.
do you want the one that's going to make you sad or the one that's going to make you happy first?
I want the one that's gonna make me sad first.
What if we brought back Kristaps?
No, thank you.
On
I mean,
mid-level
yes.
money? You don't think we would bring back Kristaps? He's averaging like 17 and 6 for the Hawks. He's probably not going to play
Yeah.
all his games. I think he's had some like little tweak injuries already.
Yeah. I've always
With
been in the
Kata
major.
backing him up, we could have like a little security there. But just like the high level play he would bring, we wouldn't be able to match from somebody else on a mid level.
Yeah. I've always been in the minority of Celtics fans of I didn't like Kristaps Porzingis. I
I
don't like
don't
him as a
even know if you were in
person.
the minority.
That's listen,
Not
like
everybody loved the Kristaps experience.
yeah, and I had personal qualms from his legal troubles and what kind of person he is, and that was my kind of big just didn't like that dude on our team. Um, as a player, I think it's a no-brainer. I think again, we know he's going to miss games. I like to my line the entire time was like I'm just waiting for Kristaps to fracture an eyelash and miss 6 weeks, and I think that's just who he is. But I mean, he's someone who's been in the system, been around our core guys, knows how to kind of fit in there. I think it would be a pretty seamless kind of transition to getting him back into it. Um, so I think if that is available, you kind of have to do that. I would not be thrilled about it, just as like a person, but in terms of like on a basketball court, I think you have to do that if it's available.
My other idea was John Collins.
So that's an interesting one because that is something that I've thought about. That John Collins is someone that I've thought about for years as just kind of like
I don't know
he's
that
not
he's a
as
starting center, but he's a great backup center.
yeah. I think he's part of like a rotating trifecta that we could build of essentially just like
If
take
you
out
have
Xavier
him
Tillman's
and Kata
negative
playing
minutes
20
and
each and then Garza playing
Luka
8.
Garza, yes, absolutely. And so that's something that I could absolutely see happening. And I did look at the Clippers as kind of whether it was for an Anfernee Simons deal or just kind of whatever. The Clippers are just so weird. Um, Trading away John Call, I believe they're are they already the oldest team assembled in NBA history? I think I saw that somewhere. Um,
It might be. There was that one Lakers team that was super old. There was the Rockets with Charles Barkley and Scottie Pippen.
yeah,
They got to be
but
up there though. Their players are getting older and they're the
yeah,
oldest
John
team.
Collins is like one of their youngest players at this point, which is a wild thing to say. They still got the carcass of Nick Batum putting in minutes, so it's um,
Nick Batum's had a
but yeah,
career.
yes, he has, and I respect him for it. But I think John Collins would be kind of an ideal if we can get him for the mid level. I like what he provides in terms of vertical spacing, just another lob threat. I think he's grown
Is a theoretical
defensively.
jump shot.
Yeah, yeah, that's someone that I
Can
would
play a little bit
enjoy.
of two, so if we wanted to go too big sometimes. Because I do think that's something we're missing a little bit is the ability to put two like 6'11", 7-footers out there at one time. That I mean, I just miss Al Horford in general, but it is one thing Al Horford really provided
Miss Al
was
Horford so much.
you could always play two bigs with Al Horford. And John Collins isn't at that level, but he is a guy who can exist with a Brook Lopez.
Yeah. Yeah, I had been thinking about someone like a Herb Jones, and then I looked at his contract, and it balloons pretty exponentially in the next couple of years, which probably makes that unfeasible. But just kind of a defensive 4 or 5 kind of guy. Um, I'm pretty open in terms of like what's available out there, but I think again, John Collins wouldn't be bad. Kristaps, I'll hold my nose and we'll do it. But yeah, and then I don't know. I again, I think it's we're gonna a lot of this is gonna depend on what we see this year from the development from our guys, which we're already seeing, and I think that's like monumental that we're 12 games into the season, 11 games into the season, and are already seeing like real big time NBA minutes from guys that were, again, like on the bubble of if they were going to get minutes at the beginning of the season. And so if we're able to continue to see development from those guys, how does that change what our lineups look like next year? And how does that affect the need for our depth? Because I'm already. If our bench can put up 50 points today, and again, 25 of that was Anfernee Simons, but if our bench is able to do that on a night to night basis and demonstrate a little bit more consistency in terms of if we can, not expect Luka Garza to be this Luka Garza every night, but just get a little bit more from him, continue to see stuff, maybe a little bit more scoring slowly like trickling in for a Walsh and a Gonzalez, then I think that we're able to build some like real solid depth around like a pretty solid core. Even without Jason Tatum, our starting lineup is already solid. Um, and so, yeah, just feeling like our depth is not in a terrible place the way that some people were afraid it would be. We need help, I think, at the big man position. But yeah, I'm not feeling bad about where the Celtics are at.
It's true. I'm assuming that it's going to be the mid level's going to be a center because that's what we clearly need right now. But a season from now, we could have made trades. Guys could get injured. Guys could break out. Um, we'll find out.
We'll
But yeah,
find
I
out.
think that's all for episode 3 of Jason Confused. Thank you all for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Find us on socials. Thanks,
And
guys.
never forget where you were when Jordan Walsh hit that three.
I won't.